Hello again, and welcome back. Last time I was talking about, well, pretty much I'm on my way. There were some boots in the I'm picking up, and after I pick those up, I'm going to be probably going down to hell to try to farm a little better. Kinda hoping those were the water walking boots. Water walking boots look interesting. And there's not really much I can do. As you can see here. Yes, there's the water walking boot. If I remember right, I had a spare obsidian. I don't remember where I put my obsidian skull. I know you can't answer me, I'm just kind of talking to myself at the moment. If I'm remembering this right, allow me to make food. Lava water, please. These will allow me to walk on water. Walk on water provides immediate, like, fire block damage, mitigation. Pretty much they're useful. They're flat out useful. Throw away some items. I don't really. Pens, I don't need those. Like, wait, is his been named Batman? What? That would be an awkward conversation. We've decided that your name is Bat. Yeah, so... lava. Fucking some lava. What I'm going to do is get some... As you can see here, this is... jungle. Normally I start off smaller than... Oh, my first jungle tree. This is rich mahogany still, right? Probably should have just knocked out the thing. But yeah, so as you can see... At one point I'm gonna have to come through and like make a small, like, get down to my elevator. I can get some wood through there. Yeah, it's just, it comes in handy to be able to out of wood, even knowing it's a different type. Anyway, last time I was talking about Obamacare. That, in short, or if you didn't listen to it, in short, my conclusion is, supplies of medicine is government subsidized nature. Same time, government-sized HMO are much better for... They sound better to people who don't know what they're talking about, because you have to pay less money into them. Sorry, there's an undead miner. He has some rare clothes. Got any drop bombs? Bomb, you can never. As I was saying, yeah, so going through quick, I can walk in this. Walk on top of it, and it doesn't trigger my... Walking on top doesn't trigger lava fall, but if I go under it, it does. A lot easier. I was a little bit afraid that maybe standing the lava, like lava perk, have some downside. If just walking on it isn't enough to trigger. Much improves it. Okay, as I was saying, government-subsidized HMOs cost less to the person, to individuals. Their tax rise is lower than if it would be a socialized medicine. At the same time, expensive in the long run. Bills you pay, like pretty much your bill, will override any savings you're getting on taxes. And, plain and simple, lack of choice. Less appealing to people who have an education. Not even so much but it's bad. It's straight up, people who are educated have a problem with not having a choice. That's what the whole Revolutionary War was about. It wasn't about, for taxation, particularly. It was mostly about, want to be told. Now, yes, the taxation was part of it, but, like, whenever you hear the big things, no taxation without representation, well, representation they were talking about wasn't, like, it was, like, having a voice heard by the king, but it wasn't, like, a democratic, like, at the time, democracies were pretty much extinct. The only democracy that had existed before, for any major amount, or any major time frame, was the Greek. And no one thought the Greek government would be an idea. If you went to America, say in the 1600s or whatever, like just before the start of the country, no one ever would have been like, yeah, we need a voice in our government. That's not how it is. They wanted to be talked to. They wanted an idea. They wanted to have some... When they sat there and said, I don't want to have to buy King's brand tea, then I don't want to have to buy King's brand tea. And that's pretty much what the problems were. Is it wasn't a lack of government, it wasn't a lack of respect, it was, well, the British decided that they were going to monopolize on the tea. Now the reason why was because the British were able to tax their teas. This is where the taxation comes from. The British were able to, or legally able to tax the teas they and selling to the colonists. They weren't, however, able to tax the teas that the Indians were making. Like, yeah, the Indians or the Asian government, the English government couldn't tax those teas. Why? Because they didn't make those teas. And the money they'd make in tariffs, comparison to the money that they'd make in taxes. Trying to think of a good equivalent bounce it off of in today's society. I think that the best one would probably be something to be like letting your friend borrow your car. You let your friend borrow your car, and then 2 weeks later, he offered to... ran out of lava immunity. But, like, you let him borrow your car, and then 2 weeks later, after having had borrowed your car for a while, he decides to fill your car up. That's good. The dude used your gas. He should fill it up. So that's nice. He fills up your gas, replaces what he spent, maybe even a little more. Maybe he's a little nice, gives you a little more extra gas as kind of a thank you for letting me borrow you. If he doesn't, it's fine. He's even if he pays less, he's trying, and that's something you can kind of be like, okay, that's good. Well, let me get rid of that ash. I don't think there's any. But then you have that dude who borrows your car and then buys you a hamburger. It's nice that he bought you a hamburger. It's nice that he bought you lunch. Kind of a dick move that he bought you lunch as a repayment for letting you borrow your car when he bought like a $5 lunch and spent like $80 gas. Or even if you just spent $20 in gas, he bought you a $5 burger to make up for it. At least he's trying, but like, even if he would have just spent that $5 on gas, at least you'd kind of have that whole, well, he paid me back some of my gas. But no, now he's just being a dick and trying to buy off your expensive gas with cheap food. And that's basically what it was, is the tariff, they weren't making enough money to make it worth their while to import. So, they were kind of like, basically they were seeing the as your dick friend who pays you back for spending all your gas with a taco. It's a nice gesture, but it's not sufficient. Compared to the British were importing, well, they could full-on tax those. That'd be the guy who's paying you back for letting you borrow the car. I'm kind of hoping with those statements that it kind of has for that version, it has a little bit more. Sadly, this is a touch that most people see an understanding, although it's a totally. But anyway, basically the argument for taxation without representation, about them having a voice in government, because no one had a voice in government. It was a monarchy. Did what the king said. If you didn't, you got your head taken off. But it was actually a choice. It was about having a choice in what they were buying. Because even though the British cheese were cheap on the colonists, well, hey, if you're at Walmart, do you buy the Walmart brand version, or do you buy the name brand version? You buy the Walmart brand version? That's good. You're saving a little money for something that's basically the same. Like, let's use the Walmart brand soap. They're basically the same. There's a little bit of difference. Not enough of a difference for you. Most people can't even tell it. Like, there are people who can. I'm not gonna say there's not. The average person is unable to tell the difference. Well, hey, but on the flip side, if you buy the expensive stuff, why do you buy the expensive stuff? Not because you have to. It's because you want to. You have a little bit extra money. You want to splurge a little bit. Maybe you can tell that difference in taste. And that's basically all that the Americans, when they revolted, were asking for, were the option to be able to choose to buy name brand or cheap ripoff. Really bad. It's like I tried to explain that in my history class sophomore year. Like, yeah, my teacher agreed with me. It's like I was right, but she didn't really like my whole comparing the British monarchy to Walmart idea. Not exactly sure why. If I had to give a guess, I'd probably say she probably thought I was a couple years later, now look at Walmart. They yeah, anyway, as I was saying, yeah, educated people have problems with not being able to choose. Even if the options, or even if the option they're being forced in physically the better option. Cheaper, it's faster, it's better. People who have an education have a problem with not being able to choose. Now, I'm not saying that the government-subsidized HMO is better. That's a matter of opinion. My opinion is it's not. Yep, my opinion is, no, it's not better, but I can understand it. I understand where it's coming from. Now, like I was saying last time, if Obama is doing this to kind of scare people into something, the man's a genius and because he thinks this is better, then he's just a rich snob. Basically for the same reasons that I've just pointed out, that educated rich people like to make choices, like to buy name brand versions even if they're not better. One isn't better. There are hundreds of people who have done it. It hurts medicine, it hurts doctors, and when you're basically telling this guy, hey, you're going to be making half as much as you normally make, or you're going to be making half as much this year as you did last year, and the year after that, you're going to be making half of that again. So, in total, you're going to be making a quarter of your annual profit, or your annual income. Yeah, that's telling a doctor, yeah, by the way, you're about to be making the same amount of money as your 16-year-old daughter who now works at Burger King. That's a problem. I can see that being a problem. Even the ones, or even doctors who have the respect to not be like, oh bitch, please, are still gonna be like, what? So, yeah. Anyway. That's an interesting talking point that is similar. I believe that that's far enough away from that it is, but at the same time being that it's a talking point that isn't too kind of an interesting way to say it. Literally is a political. Hey, we're talking about politics. We're talking about current politics, in fact. But at the same time, it is, at least in my opinion, or an opinion, or more of opinionated statements than because saying the president is probably just a rich dick, not a very politically balanced statement. Anybody came up to me with that opinion, fine, that's your opinion, but you say that as, well, that's my political standing. Not a very good political standing. Like I said before, take what I said with a grain of salt, my opinion, and I'm not a political major. My majors have been in pre-medicine, which I only did a year, and psychology and general, like a major of social. I'm probably about as like my education level is about as average as you. I like to read, so I like to think that I'm more educated than you. Oh, I was smarter than most of the kids when I was at school. I'm gonna stick with the I'm smarter than the average bear. I'm probably not as smart as the average politician, which most of them are just kind of going for votes, trying to keep their cush jobs, not actually doing stuff that's smart. Kind of get away with saying I might be as smart as the average politician. I'm not saying the president's an idiot. I understand where some of the things he's coming from. But picking something different later, it's a kind of like basically scaring all the people, everybody into thinking that he's going to be signing legislation that will allow him to limit access to guns. My opinion on firearms is my own. Not gonna get into that one right now. I'd do another one, so not gonna get into that one right now. Like to make so yeah, Obamacare thing, as good as it could. Now, another I kind of hinted at is a public versus parliament versus democracy idea. And basically for the fact that, hey, I am basically just mining. I figure I might as well at least give you having some form of talk going on. Yeah. What's that? Oh, no. Currently, the democracy are democracy. Are separate things. Like a lot of people will say they're the same. And it's actually kind of a sad thing that people aren't being taught this properly. Democracy, take apart the word democracy. Demo means people. Time where demo means. It's kind of the Greek Latin slash. Demo is demon in Latin, but it's people in Greek. So kind of tells you what the Latins like what the Latins thought about the Greek people. Actually, that's probably not exactly what, or not what that meant at all, but it is kind of a funny joke. Yeah, so you have the democracy led by the people. Well, yeah, so, well, what exactly does that mean? Well, it means every person has an individual voice. The problem is everybody thinks that the United States is a democracy. Or at least everybody in the United States. Not sure how people in most of not exactly sure how most of them are taught to see us. Kind of a methodology is fathomed throughout society. Giant teaching where everybody's like, well, in a democracy, everybody's voice gets heard. And one of the big, huge things is, well, hell, you have Texas. Texas became a state because of one. And, like, that's a big, like, go vote for people. Your vote counts. Texas was only state by one vote. And so that's actually the exact opposite of what that means. Texas was made a state not by a public vote, but by a vote of Congress. Like, there's Congress, like the House of Representatives. So you have the Senate and the House of Representatives all come together to make Congress. Well, they voted to make Texas, and it was by one vote that Texas became one vote from one constituent. That doesn't mean one vote from a person. In fact, that kind of means the opposite of that. About it, every member of Senate, member of the House, by X amount of people from their constituency. So, saying that they're members of, or that a single one of their votes, well, a single one of their votes comes out to a lot of our votes. In it, you have two, literally half of your state. Each of those people represent half of your state. Have the House of Representatives. It's a little better because it's like represent like 200,000 of you or something. So each one of them has 200,000 voices behind them. So kind of see what I'm getting at. Moving on. So it's kind of one of those like myths, but it isn't true. Sorry, some examples are like the Texas, but plain and simple, just representative doesn't have to have your opinion in mind. Now, he kind of wants to kind of please you a little bit because if you're not going to vote him back in, but if the guy you elect wants to turn around and go, hey, you know what? I'm gonna elect, or I'm gonna choose to do this thing that will totally take over all of my constituency because it's my last year, I'm going to retirement. He can totally do that, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So if, like, let's say the senator of Kentucky put in a bill to change Kentucky to change Kentucky's into land of fried chicken. Well, your opinion doesn't matter to that. It will go up to vote, and gets it passed. Your vote has nothing to do with it. Not yours. So it isn't actually a true democracy because your individual vote public, which means that it's a representative democracy. At the time was fine. Like when it was started, it makes perfect sense. I mean, we had no way at the time to count X 100,000 people all over the country. Today we do. Like, we have computers, we could actually put it, like, the voting system is, in one day, thousands of people vote for them. Which is kind of a sad thing, because, like, I'm not saying voting's bad, have some pretty liberal ideas on voting. Time for different. President, you don't get to vote. Like, you vote and you tell. Like, we have an electoral Congress, which is basically the same thing. You have people who have basically educated in elections, and your job as a citizen is to kind of tell them what you want, and then they vote based on. Whenever they do election stuff for the president, that's kind of what they're talking. It's like you have X amount of states have X amount of. That's great and all, but at the same time, that's not. Those votes aren't counted by thousands, millions of people. Like those are singular votes. Like California has 32 votes. That's not 32 million votes. not even 3,200 votes. That's 30. And when those 32 votes by 32 individuals, you don't actually have to represent the voting behind. If you're in the electoral college, I really want this guy, you can vote. You have to vote with you. That's a problem. So, if, like, they normally do, kind of like nothing that says they have. Somebody was really rooting for somebody and they lost, and it was like, oh, well, there's one electoral college vote to go, and because with the way everything's made up, like, well, they won the majority, but, they're going to lose, like, if they don't get this vote, they're not going to get president, it's going to have to go to a revote. Actually a clause in the election, in presidential election, that it can't win by like 51%. You actually have to win the electoral vote by like 7. Again, this is something I haven't looked up a lot. I could be wrong on it. But again, you can't win with just 51. You have to have a clear majority. And at the same time, that clear majority doesn't have to be the local majority. We've had a couple of presidents in the past couple of years have become president without having the the Democratic majority. How do you win the vote when the majority, most of the people didn't vote? It has to do with the colleges. That goes into the things. That goes into representation and all that. Now this is a problem because back in the day this worked fine, but we didn't have technology. Like literally the technology of the day was pen and paper. Well, nowadays we have computers, thousands of people to vote for them, and have those votes counted up by the next day. Why do we need a bunch of people being hundreds of thousands of dollars to sit in a room, wait till the votes get counted, not count the votes themselves, wait till the votes get counted, and then check a box on what they vote? I mean, that'd literally be like, hey, we're gonna pay you to sit in your room and watch TV. Oh, also, you have the choice of what channel you want to watch. But we're gonna give you some suggestions on what we think you should be watching, but if you don't want to, go ahead and just change the channel to whatever you want to watch. I mean, literally what they're doing is they're giving people a paycheck to do what they want to do, and all they have to do to earn it is sit in a room and then listen to the suggestion, not heed the suggestion, but listen to the suggestion of people. Where can I sign up for that kind of a job? I've worked enough crap jobs. I've worked in gas stations. I've worked at burger joints. I worked in a pizzeria. I've worked enough crap jobs. I think I deserve a job where you do whatever the hell you want, and we pay you obscene amounts of money to do it. Is part of my job description. I think we all deserve that at some point in time. But at the same time, we have computers. We can completely remove that type of position from government, which would actually give us lots of money to waste in government, because we wouldn't have to be paying those people. All we'd have to do is 1 year's worth of their paychecks go into putting in a computer system to vote. There's a paper, like, we can still have a paper voting system. Still have the people who are holding up the elections. Most of them are volunteers, but the ones who get paid, they can still have their jobs. Like, we're not firing them, but we're saving money because we're no longer paying electoral college because we're actually being a democracy and not a republic. Yeah, there's that. You move over, look at names in general, this is actually kind of a little bit of a funny thing. It doesn't really mean anything, but I used to make a lot of jokes, especially like when you're going through the last couple of elections. One of the big ringers has been terrorism. So, moment, gotta get rid of this bat. I don't want to die when I'm sitting here talking. But like one of the big ringers for. So, well, how do you combat terrorism? Well, you don't be afraid. Sadly enough, it's pretty much the way to combat terrorism is not be terrorized. I know it sounds stupid, but sadly it kind of works. Anyway, like I was saying, one of the big arguments lately has been about terrorism. Not gonna argue that point. Like, not gonna argue against that. But one of the huge things being terrorism is, well, it's kind of like it's a hot word at the moment. If you say terrorism, you can pretty much push people to do whatever you want them to do. Some people are afraid of it, so either flare up the people who are upset them. Which, okay, being upset by terrorism, I can see that. Not a big deal. Have the people who are like, stop doing that. Then you have the people who are do anything. Well, why do I think that we need to give little kids guns? Because if we don't give the kids guns, then terrorism. Like, literally, that's about as simple as it gets nowadays. Some of the arguments are literally, if we don't do this... What's kind of wrong with that argument? Anybody else agree? It's a little sad that that's where we are at as a out is here. Yeah, terrorism is something we not saying it's not. Worrisome. Terrorism is bad. But at the same time, as horrible bad as everyone out to be. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying terrorism. Saying idea that terrorism, all powerful, I mean, nobody wants to get hurt. But when you're gonna sit here and convince people lives are at stake if they sign a bill that will increase a hot word, that's just not. Anyway, back to what I was talking about as mentioned in this, before I get trailed about how some politicians are. Some of the big hot words: terrorism. Some of the people who are saying have the Democrats, the Republicans, and this statement isn't exactly going against either party. Once I'm finished saying it, you probably know what party I count myself under. But, so I was sitting there and looking at it, right? Every like literally every politician I was listening to. Terrorism, terrorism this, terrorism, monkeys this, monkeys that. Literally, you come up with an argument point that involves something, terrorism. Like, there were a bunch of TV shows that kind of made fun of that a little bit, but at the same time, as sad as it is, they were kind of making fun of it, but it... Like, hey, what do you think about schools and it? Everybody was agreeing, like, okay, yeah, that's a good... Like, no, that's not a good point. Not a good point at all. It rocks. Oh, don't want that. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So yeah, so it's like, since I was being everybody's hot word, what I was going around for a little while saying, well, tell which politicians are terrorists just by looking at their names. Well, in the U.S., there's this thing we have called the Pledge of Allegiance. Anybody who knows it, knows what. I mean, just look at the word that it said. Its name is. Pledging allegiance to the country. To argue that that's a good thing. Saying that you're loyal to the country you live in, kind of the, like, bare minimum. Basically, like, you're not even saying, hey, I won't assassinate the president. You're just saying, hey, if I do something, I'm gonna do it in the best, country. I revolt against the country, I'm gonna do it for the country. I live in the country, I wanna keep it nice and... Literally, it's like one of the weakest have. It's important. Why? Allegiance to the country you live in. And if you can't have an allegiance to the country you live in, what a... Anyway, so going through with it, I was sitting there, I'm just like saying, like, yeah, pretty much every politician has to, like, go over the allegiance whenever they get. Well, one of the new things that were added, like, the war era, was that there's a clause now that goes to communism. So that's kind of a nicety. Nobody really likes communism. Well, I mean, I guess communism. Communism is, like, I'm not gonna go say, like, communism's the devil or anything, but communism's not a, oh my god, kill word anymore. Communist, like, back during the Cold War, that used to be, like, a big, like, oh my god, you said something was communist, and, or, like, a communist spy or something like that. Most people are still completely uneducated on it, on what communism is. Actually, not gonna get to that part, but yeah, there's so many people who don't know what it is, but it's still considered a hobby. Well, I was looking at some of them, and trying to think of how to say this without something. Yeah, basically, while listening to some, I noticed that one of the parties had a name. Like, well, what are the two major parties' names? Have the Democrats and the Republicans. Democrats, Republicans. That doesn't sound like much. gonna sit here is like, what does it mean? You probably don't know. I mean, it's well, you have political beliefs that are X or Y. But that's not actually what those words mean. Democrat and Republican have actual definitions. A Democrat is somebody who supports the democracy, whereas a Republican is someone who supports the Republic. Now, if you remember, I was kind of saying a couple of things about allegiance. One of the parts of the Pledge of Allegiance is democracy. As an American, we go through democracy. What's that mean? We claim to have a democracy. But as I said, we really don't. What we have is a republic. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not gonna say that's a bad thing. I prefer I understand why we have a republic. A democracy could... Why we don't do it is a political thing. I'm not getting into that because, as I said, I'm not a political major, I'm not politics, I'm not like that. It's just ranting. Yeah, so I used to kind of make a joke to someone that, hey, if you're really looking for what the terrorist is, just look at the names of the parties they represent. One of them represents a democracy. And then some of my friends were like, yeah, that means that the Republicans are the terrorists. I'm like, actually, look at it. Allegiance, you don't pledge allegiance to a democracy. Republic. So you pledge allegiance to follow the same side as the people who are defending the Republic. Technically, that means that the Democrats are going against the Pledge of Allegiance that they claim to have taken in order to become members of the United States. It makes them terrorists because, their name is them literally going against the claim of allegiance. Now, it was a joke and it had no meaning, but at the same time, it is kind of a thinking that, hey, everybody keeps bringing up stuff about names. Stop doing that because the names. It was a little bit funny to be able to sit there and be like, yeah, Obama's a terrorist because he's a Democrat. Hillary's a terrorist because she's a Democrat, not a Republican. And all that stuff. I mean, that's funny little rabble for Facebook. It kind of gets to the point where it's pretty stupid. Pretty fast. Noticed I did pick up the multiple. I make elevator. I'm at the point where I'm probably not that far off from fighting, also, since this gives me a 17% extra damage to melee, my Knight's Edge now does 50 damage. So, that's pretty good. We're about an hour, so I could. Anyway, as I was saying though, basically what I've been saying this last whole conversation, kind of summarizing, is everybody keeps going off about how America is a democracy. Actually wrong, and we're taught that it's a democracy. Cool, and that's the sad thing. I'm not saying that what we have is bad. I'm not saying it's... I will say if you look at what a republic is, if you look at the republics in Star Wars, there were some problems with that republic, because that republic became an empire. when certain alliances were made. Having an international republic slightly different than having a intergalactic republic. I'm not saying that Star Wars is bad. If you look at it, it does highlight there are some things that could happen wrong in that situation. How do I think that situation? But at the same time, I'm more of hoping that they don't. I don't think it's possible. I'm gonna go ahead and end this video.